Hello, welcome to Halcyon Wrestling Talk. This week we're going to be talking about Summerslam, all the big topics. So the new title, Finn Balor, Brock Lesnar, Randy Orton, what my impressions of Summerslam are. We're also going to be touching on something that happened on Raw as well. Very, very brief, but it's worth mentioning because of its significance and its correlation to another incident. Anyway, stay tuned and I hope you enjoy it. Welcome to the Halcyon Podcast, talking about wrestling talk. Summerslam has just been and gone. Controversial, shocking, very uppy-downy. Difficult to distinguish what was good, what was bad. Plenty of talking points though, and I'll try and keep them brief. But we'll kick off with the number one thing that sucked the most. That goddamn... Right, take out of the account it's called the Universal title. Think about that. What? No. You can think of a better name than the Universal title. That sucks ass. It's just a red version of the main title. It's so peculiar, the balance at the moment. Raw seems to have the better talent and the better show, but everything about Raw seems to be second-hand when compared to SmackDown. It's very, very peculiar. Anywho, the Universal title was debuted. I think it's fair to say the audience weren't feeling it, but I do take the point that I've listened to a few podcasts and things of that nature since. I do take the point, who really cares what the title looks like as an audience? It's the competitors that really should give a shit whether or not that they're the ones that got to wear that. Think of all the people that had to wear the John Cena spinner belt when they weren't John Cena back in the day. That wasn't such a long time ago, so bear that in mind. But that said, the match itself between Finn Balor and Seth Rollins was very, very good. You can attest to the professionalism of Seth Rollins by the fact that he was doing absolutely everything he could to get the crowd back on side. It was just very, very impressive how he was trying to command that audience, even with every single one of them trying to steal the show. Very, very sad. Finn Balor going over, first Universal Champion. Interesting. They're pushing him. You can't say that he's not being given a fair shake of the stick, but by the same token, wasn't overly impressed with the match. A few false finishes. I'm sick to death of people kicking out of finishes. What happened to a pedigree? No one ever kicked out the pedigree back in the day. Nobody. That was it. It was done deal when you saw the pedigree. But never mind. All the same, pedigree aside, Seth Rollins, did his reputation no damage whatsoever by coming into that match. As slightly coward heel, worked strong though. Ended up putting Finn Balor over. First match I've ever seen of Finn Balor, really. Very athletic, very technically gifted. Still struggling to see what the difference between the Demon and his normal persona is. Doesn't really seem to add anything to his repertoire apart from he walks to the ring a bit more creepily than he would do in his leather jacket. I don't know. Oh, and a slight addendum right in the middle of this. Just checked out Raw. Finn Balor looks great with the belt. I don't know what people are so... It doesn't look terrible. Actually, having had a day to think about it, I kind of like it. I think it looks quite cool. Having to relinquish it so soon... Really? Whatever. Raw is as Raw does. I'll give you a full Raw recap at some stage in the next couple of weeks. I'll try and keep up with it on a regular basis. But man, Finn Balor having to relinquish it already. What the hell's that all about, man? In any event, it was good to see the Demon debuting on pay-per-view, not on Raw. Obviously, he debuted last week and kicked Seth Rollins all over the ring. But the next big point of contention, and this is kind of weird because we older school fans kind of hearkened for this, but when it actually happened, I'm not sure we were happy with what we got. Brock Lesnar making friends with Randy Orton's forehead. I mean, Jesus Christ, split him wide open. The match itself was pretty boring. They book Brock so strong these days. He just sort of turns up, wins, and goes home. They've just had to make it really unscrupulous to kind of make it bearable or watchable. Very, very odd. I think the thing with Brock Lesnar is, with the Undertaker streak, you've booked yourself a beast. And I think the way that they've got to start booking him isn't as an actual competitor. He needs to be an event in of himself. He's got to take up a mantle similar to the Undertaker streak. If you're only going to have him for four matches of a year, have him as an event. See if anyone can slay the beast, as it were. Have your normal championships be competitive, almost like actual fights, UFC fights. Wins actually count for something. Losses actually matter. They're devastating when they happen, rather than it being, oh, he's lost, terrible, move on to the next one. ramifications from the loss. That's something that took away from SummerSlam as well. It was just like, oh, okay, well, Dean Ambrose won. So we'll move on to the next thing. Where's the... I don't know. There's no selling. There's no, oh my god, I can't believe it. Do you know what this means? It's just one of those things where it just seems to be sold differently these days. The next match is the next thing, and it's like, right, well, before you've even finished this candy bar, you've opened another one. But anyway, point being, with Brock Lesnar, it is what it is. He needs them just as much as they need him now because of the drug issue with UFC. So I think that's interesting. I think the highlight of the match has got to be AJ Styles versus John Cena. Who the fuck thought Cena was going to put AJ Styles over? How crazy is that? Everyone actually applauded it. It was like, wow, congratulations for doing the job. Thanks for doing what we all hoped you'd do and put him over. But it was a great match. Fantastic match. It shows what AJ Styles can do if he's booked correctly. Almost kind of babyface-ish during the match, but then went full heel afterwards. I'm okay with AJ Styles being a heel. I've only really ever been exposed to him being a heel, so I suppose if he ever gets something babyface, then great. But for the moment, he's working just fine on his own. Again, odd title switch with Charlotte and Sasha Banks. Probably one of the first women's title matches that I've sat down and watched beginning to end. You have to admire their both technical ability, but there's still rough edges there that need to be ironed out. In terms of execution with things, but entertaining match. Had me spoiling for the finish. The actual finishing maneuver itself I thought was really, really impressive. It's good that they're adding more credence to the women's title. It's good that it's more fiercely contested than it's ever been in terms of it standing on the card. I thought that was really, really good the way they placed it. And I'll finish with Ambrose beating Ziggler. I think here's my thing on Ziggler. He's too closely associated with Shawn Michaels now that everyone looks at him like a Shawn Michaels light. You need to do something with him to break him out on his own and dissociate him with him. Obviously, be inspired by him. I mean, Ric Flair, Buddy Rogers, Triple H, Harley Race. These are the people that follow the spirit of a previous wrestler, yes, but they're distinct in their own. No one would say Harley Race was Triple H or Triple H was Harley Race, vice versa with Ric Flair and Buddy Rogers. Weirdly enough, I think with Ziggler, they just need to add a bit of grit to his game, a bit of bite to his game. He's too good. Sometimes he's too slick. He's too good at chaining. He's too good at the spectacular moves. They need to give him something to dissociate him from Shawn Michaels just a little bit. I'm not too sure what that could be. I think it's probably, again, he's in an era where he can't go into the hardcore matches and earn the respect of the fans through, going through a war of some kind. He's got to find a different niche. He's got to find a different way of getting his personality across if they'll allow him to. But considering the build-up to this wasn't amazing for a world title shot, it's debatable to see. He has the opportunity and the potential to be a big star at SmackDown, though, so I guess we'll see what happens. But Ambrose doing some slightly heelish moves, imitating Ziggler. Ziggler not really reacting to it. It's kind of odd. I think they're going with him as a bit of an Austin kind of, he kind of does what he wants and da-da-da. Yeah, if that's what you want to do. I think Ambrose personally doesn't have the kind of charisma to carry that. But all in all, it was an enjoyable pay-per-view. It just didn't have that high, oh my god moment that we all crave in those pay-per-views. I think the fans were asking for a bit too much when they were chanting for Goldberg at the end, and I do think, all things considered, I haven't seen it yet, but considering everyone was chanting NXT, referencing TakeOver Brooklyn the night before, I would assume that was probably a better show, so I'll have to check that out at some point, considering that was a top 4 pay-per-view. That's slightly disappointing to hear, but maybe that's just the fans' bias. The fans have a bad habit, touched on this before, they have a bad habit of taking over the shows these days and making it about them rather than just observing and being part of the experience rather than making the experience. I don't know. But in any event, I would, if you haven't already seen it, again, I've already made my recommendation. I'm signed up now, £10 a month, starting from next month, the WWE Network. You should definitely go check it out if you haven't done already. In any event, thanks a lot for checking out the podcast. We'll see you on the next one. It should be dropping very, very shortly. And we'll see you soon. Take care.
And that was the Halcyon podcast. Sorry, it got a little bit erratic there. I was being attacked by a wasp, if you can believe it. But yeah, it's
fucked up. Anyway, I appreciate you listening to the podcast. Stay tuned for the next one. By the way, thanks a lot for everybody who checked out the podcast last week, all 3 of them, and the Blink reviews now that they've been released. So stay tuned. Fresh content's going to be produced on a weekly basis from here on in, so stay tuned, and we'll see you next time. So thank you for tuning in, people!